There are only 5 points separating the bottom 8 of the Premier League. That Premier League relegation battle, we're getting to that point where it's starting to heat up and fans are getting angry, very, very angry. And therefore, pressure ensues on some of these managers. And someone's going to go, aren't they? It feels like it. That sort of, you have this moment, I think, in November or October every single year where it's like, okay, people are on bad runs now. And there's a moment where you've got to make the decision. A similar thing seems like it might be happening when it comes to some of these teams and managers. I just wanted to run through some of the managers and kind of see where they're at, if you think they'll be okay, what are the reasons why they're struggling and down there. But again, like 2-3 victories and you're starting to sort of breathe once again. But some huge games this weekend, including West Ham, Everton. We're going to be doing a preview on that one. So make sure you watch that one because that is such a huge game. Let's start off with West Ham, who are really, really struggling. But they've got a manager who I think at the start of the season, if you think it's not going to go well, you think they've still got a little bit of credit in the bank. I've consistently said that David Moyes will fix it. He'll figure it out. There's a good squad there. They need a minute. And the problem has always been the rise in expectations. But only 4 wins in 2022. And talk that David Moyes might lose his job. But also actually talk that there might be a £7 million payout if you do decide to get rid of David Moyes. Where do you sit on this one, David? Because he's obviously a good manager and he's had a great career, but I know Nubaid feels like there's restrictions on his ability to take teams where West Ham probably want to go. So how do you feel about it?
I think they should have pulled the trigger on Moyes a long, long time ago.
Really?
Yeah, if you look back when Aston Villa changed coach and they brought in Unai Emery, that was in October. I think West Ham probably would have had a really good chance to sell Emery London, to sell him the squad that they have. They probably had a better squad on paper than Villa. The fact you're in London as well is also a big appeal. I think they could have got Emery, and I think he could have really revived their fortunes, lifted a lot of their players. I think got players in their right positions, got players confident again as well. Players like Paqueta, Scamaca, we've seen nothing from them. Moyes hasn't got anything out of them, but this is an age-old story with Moyes, with certain players, that he cannot seem to extract that extra bit out of them in terms of creative players, in terms of somebody a little bit different outside the usual kind of Moyes mould players.
On the pitch, what is the problem here? Because, like David said, that's a good squad. It's a good first 11.
I think they're stuck between, and I was listening to actually David Moyes on the Stephen Bartlett podcast, and he was talking about how he wants to change the image of West Ham, and he wants them to play attractive football, and he wants neutrals to come and watch West Ham, because we've got a big stadium, we want to fill it out, we need new fans, and the fans are younger, etc., etc. So I think he's stuck between, with no disrespect to Thomas Souček, Aaron Cresswell, and now you're going to Paqueta and Scamaca. The technical ability difference is quite a bit, and these guys are used to playing in sort of teams that let you loose. Paqueta in particular, for Brazil, he practically plays as an attacking midfielder, but plays in a pair. And I think Moyes, when you watch them play now, they're going, all right, we've got Scamaca, let's whip it into him. He's so good technically. Give the ball to his feet, like you're screaming.
Back to goal, bring it to his feet.
Yeah,
I just don't know what fans are going to go in their droves to see a David Moyes team. Who?
But I think that's kind of what he's trying to do, though. He's trying to get your Jared Bowens, your Declan Rice, because they've actually got players who are very, very good, but also have the David Moyes attitude.
Right.
And then bring in Scamaca and Paqueta. The problem is, he's brought them in and he's still trying to play like how he wants to play. And he's so used to having Antonio up there where they just like zip the ball into the corner flag. He makes something happen, win a corner, crowd gets behind you, you hit the post from a corner and you get going. That's not how these guys want to play, and I think there's a bit of an issue there in translating what he wants and what the players would like to do.
Yeah, so you're kind of saying growing pains to a point, right? Whereas the clientele is better, but going from what was very functional previously, and also I think you had players who, I keep coming back to that word of expectation, because I think when you're expected to dominate, first of all, the opposition tried that a little bit harder, and you see it every single year. But also I think there's players who go, oh, we'll get another chance, there'll be another moment. And so the level of intricacy in that forward play needs to be better than get the ball to Soufal and let him put a cross in, or Cresswell and get Souček. Just get yourself in the box, lad. A bit like Fellaini back with Everton last year. He got a lot of plaudits for it previously, but now it does feel like there's, like say with Arteta, you can see exactly what they're doing. I think the sign of a great team is you know exactly what they're going to do and you still can't stop them. With West Ham, you don't truly know how they're scoring their goals at this moment in time, and they're not scoring goals.
There's no progression, there's no adaptation to a new style there at all. I mean, if you look at West Ham last season, they've relied heavily, I think, on Bowen and how they play. Getting the ball out to him quickly, sitting in quite deep, launching the ball out to him and counter-attacking quickly. His form has completely gone off a cliff. Because generally, I think, and if you look at the older players who were there, who were performing before, Kufal, Susek, they all just seem disinterested. So that tells me that they're bored with the ideas that they've been hearing from Moyes, that we're not hearing anything new. What's making me want to enjoy my football anymore? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah, well, they need goals. You know, the XG is actually not woeful, 23.4 expected goals, but actually they've only scored 15 of those. So Danny Ings looks like he's going to be the guy that comes in. I know he's your favourite, Nubaid. I'm a huge fan of his actually as well. I think he's kind of got everything you want from a centre forward. You know, can score several different type of goals. And if you can get the Southampton Ings, you've got one hell of a player, haven't you?
I think, in all fairness, even when he's been fit at Villa, he's done very well. Yeah. He has scored goals. He's their top scorer this season with 6.
Do you play him up front on his own? Does Scamacca come out?
But this is the problem. Like they've signed Scamacca to not pair him with Antonio, which was never going to work because they're both players as individuals play on their own. And Ings can play in a pair, but he's not going to work with Scamacca and he's not going to work with Antonio. So now you've got 3 strikers who all want to play by themselves, essentially. One of them is a goal poacher, and Ings gets involved in the game. He can sort of drop in, allow Bowen to go in behind. Scamacca can do the same, but Scamacca is also incredibly selfish. He wants to score from every different angle. And then you've got Antonio, who's like your workhorse up front. So where I do think Ings will be a good signing, and he probably doesn't need as much service as the other two, I do worry that they've brought him in to try and just score a few goals for us.
Yeah, it's sort of an awkward time within football for Danny Ings in his career, because he is someone who, you know, it'd be great to have someone with him, and I think Shea Adams was often with him at Southampton. But a lot of teams don't want to play with 2 up top. They want wide forwards, and that's going to make life difficult for him. But if he brings him in, you'd hope he's got a plan for him. But you could have said the same about Scamacca. Let's talk about some other managers who are under a little bit of pressure. Here's one that I don't actually think he is under pressure, but I know Leicester City fans are fed up with him, or it feels like. Brendan Rodgers. For me, I saw something at the start of the season where it feels like to me like this is financially a transitional season for them, and they've kind of gone, you're the best manager we can probably get right now. This squad is kind of all over the place, and we need to invest for that to occur, but we kind of need to wait to be able to go and do that. And that's why the one thing that I'm really surprised is that Tielemans hasn't been sold, because I think there's money to be made. But I think if they were mid-table and fine, they might have actually gone and done that and sort of taken the risk just to get through this year, because I think I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of went again in the summer. With Brendan Rodgers, wouldn't it be silly to sack him now when he's kind of already ridden the storm once?
Yeah, I think out of all the managers down there, I agree with you. He's the one who's under the least pressure. I think Leicester's had a few issues. A lot of players, again, seem to be almost eyeing their next move. You know, we talk about Maddison and Newcastle. Tielemans as well. Everybody's linked to Tielemans for the end of the season and now in January, and there's others as well. So, you know, there's part that, and there's part... When they sold players before and they replaced them, they seem to replace them really, really well. But it's like, I think Samaria and Daka both came in, and they've not really contributed anything. Whether that's on them or whether it's Rodgers not properly integrating them, I'm not too sure. Some of the young players that he's brought through have done really, really well. Dewsbury Hall, for instance, you know, I think has been really good, and if they can get him back from injury, that'll be important. So it's interesting to see where they are in terms of an identity as a club. What are they now? Are they a mid-table club? Are they one of those clubs who want to push on in the future and try and get into Europe and bring in players to develop and then maybe sell on for high prices like they used to? Or are they actually in... I think relegation would be catastrophic for them, looking at that. You know,
yeah, of course. I think there's always a little bit of a risk when it comes to that. Only 2 points is the World Cup. Let's keep moving, because Frank Lampard is in real difficulty, and the whole... I don't want to use the word noise, because these, you know, Everton fans are really, really upset with the state of the club at this moment in time. But protests, you know, board members not going to games because of fear of their own safety, and a manager who hasn't got too much of the heat. And I think the Everton fans, they like the guy, but with the squad that's there, I think that's a good enough squad. If, for example, if you put Sean Dyche in there or David Moyes in there, I think you're absolutely fine. So, with Frank Lampard and maybe the way that he wants to play, has he got it in him to get them where they want to be? Because I think they've won 1 game in 13 now.
I think they struggle for identity. We just spoke about West Ham's identity. I just think Lampard throws out an 11. They try and sit back and then sometimes get caught playing sort of like basketball in a football match, and then they sort of like over reliant on Damari Gray to produce something and Onana to be box to box, and then their back three's a little bit shaky. And I just think it gets to a point in the season where you look at the players that he's got on the pitch, and I'm looking at their 11 now, and I would argue there's 3 or 4 players in there that are very much so good enough to play mid-table in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And he just cannot get a song out of them. Against Southampton, they gave up in the second half. And I'm thinking, you've got a relegation battle. None of you guys want to go down. Some of you are new to the club. And it feels like you're all going, we can't win this game. And I think that's probably the difference. That's where I think Sean Dyche or David Moyes just simplify the game a lot more and go 4-4-2, sit back. And we're not going to score goals anyway because our forwards are not in form. We'll just grab a goal from a corner or a free kick and we'll scrape our way to wins, and I think he's got a big problem that he doesn't know how to do that at the moment. Yeah,
I think it's funny, isn't it? We talk about David Moyes not capable to get West Ham where they want to be. He's kind of perfect for this kind of job because it's going to be a far more functional team, and it's actually a team that's set up to be quite functional in terms of a lot of size in that team. You know, you're going to have a target man generally. I think they're looking at some strikers to bring in, and it feels like that's really needed because Dominic Calvert-Lewin can't stay fit, and when he is playing, he hasn't really scored too many goals. And then you've got Maupay who comes in, and actually I think a damning thing was that Southampton made 5 substitutions. This is a team that's bottom of the league, playing at Goodison Park. Everton had 2 players that they'd bought in the summer that they didn't even want to bring on. That's really, really dangerous stuff. For me, I'm starting to struggle to see how Frank Lampard gets to the end of the season. Jesse Marsch is the final one we want to talk about. Great win against Cardiff, but it is Cardiff, championship side. And he's got some exciting players, and there's been a lot of recruitment there. Yeah. Do you think Jesse Marsch is going to be able to sort of stitch it all together and sort of sail away?
No, I think ultimately he's the wrong man as well. Right. I think he should probably go. I think he should have gone a long time as well. I think they're throwing money at the situation. They brought in Rutter. Bamford's coming back as well, so there's kind of hope that he'll get them some goals. But they're just too open, too naive. I don't see any improvement from when Bielsa left. I think they've gone backwards. I think a lot of players have gone backwards. I'd love to know who's improved. I don't know which player has actually improved for Leeds. I don't think it's anyone, to be honest with you. I think Marsch showed himself a long time ago to be out of his depth, I think, in the Premier League level. He just doesn't look up to it at all, and I think I would move on. I wouldn't want to spend that amount of money on a manager that I'm not sure on, and they're definitely not sure on because they've been sounding out other managers.
I disagree. I actually think Leeds are a very, very good side to watch. There is obviously there's naivety to their game, but if you look at like their last 10 fixtures, in every single game, Leeds put a great account of themselves in. The one thing that's missing is a forward. They just can't put the ball in the back of the net enough. Obviously, they're leaky at the back, but they'll continue to be leaky because they've invested in midfielders and forwards. I also think you can't sack a manager when you've given him this much money. Like you can't. Like these are his players.
You just said the same for David Moyes, though.
Yeah, but David Moyes, I don't think David Moyes wanted half of those players. I think he has an idea of where he wanted to go. I think Jesse Marsch actually wants a lot of the signings that they've made, and this is his team. So if you sack him and you bring in Sean Dyche, it's a very different case to like Everton.
If Sean Dyche can't get a job in the next month, then there's a problem.
He's been at a few games, to be fair.
Bielsa still hasn't got a job, you know. Come on.
Just bring him back in. Imagine that, David Moyes to Everton. Out of those 4 then, just quickly, and let us know in the comments down below how you feel about this. Of those 4, who will survive to the end of the season? I'll go first. Jesse Marsch, I think he'll hang in there. Although I've tipped him. I think last week I tipped him to go down, so I'm getting confused. I'm starting to see something with Jesse Marsch in that squad. I think there's enough live wires there, and I think Brendan Rodgers will be fine. But I feel like Moyes and Lampard might actually get the chop at some point. What do you think?
I think out of those managers, I think there's only Rodgers going to steer the cost at the end of the season.
Okay.
I think Jesse Marsch will be there. I think Rodgers will walk personally at the end of the season. I think Lampard will go before Moyes does.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.